Everybody was kongfu fighting. Those kids were fast as
Hi, Benjamin. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm
Yes.
working hard, and yes, I'm fine.
What have you been doing these days during quarantine?
Actually, I should have a party and have some celebration because just maybe 3 hours ago, I delivered the first draft of my new novel. I've been working on that for the last few weeks.
Talking about novels, let's talk about this book of yours, your
Right,
latest one,
right.
The
The
Life
life
and
and
Rhymes of Benjaminzephaniah.
yeah, that's me.
First of all, let's introduce you to the audience who don't know you yet, although you're very famous already.
So, my full name is Benjamin Obadiah Iqbal Zephaniah.
Oh, okay.
People just call me Benjamin Zephaniah.
Yeah.
And I'm a poet, writer, musician, TV presenter, radio presenter, professor of poetry and creative writing,
Yes.
footballer, part-time. And I'm sure I forgot something, but I'm just a creative person
Yeah.
and I want to spread love all over the world.
Yes.
There's too much war, too much hatred, and too many viruses, you know.
Exactly. I have to tell you why I like this book so much. It's because I know you for more than 10 years,
Yes,
and what you write in this book, I have no idea of. I'm
right.
sure like a couple, like maybe two or three little frames of the story you have mentioned to me. But
Yes,
there's so much in this book of your life, how you grew up in the poor neighborhood in Birmingham, grow up into a man like who you are today, a very
yes.
successful, multi-talent, wise man. Like you can do so many things you can't even describe yourself. All that you've been through is in this book. Not all, but the major events.
Yes. One of my agents kept telling me to write my life story. I thought nobody's going to be interested in my life. But then she persuaded me, and then I wrote The Life and Rhymes of Benjamin Zephaniah. And it's my best-selling book ever. You know, it's really strange. It's the one I thought would be most quiet. It's the one I thought would be least popular.
Mm,
But it's become more popular than
mm,
my poetry books because people that like my poetry and music will read it, but
mm,
also people that are just interested in people's lives will read it.
mm.
There's some people that that's all they read, autobiographies, you know.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
original draft of that book
yeah.
was 2 times longer, you know.
Wow.
But we had to edit it down, of course, you know. The
Yeah.
publisher wanted a particular size. And then there's some people in there we couldn't find them to get permission to use, you know, to call
Mm,
their name and things like this. Since that book came out, I've been doing a tour, you know, the
yeah,
BBC to make it into a film.
yeah,
You know, I've done a lot more acting. That's something I
yeah.
never mentioned before, but I've been doing a lot of acting recently.
Yeah. One surprise for me after I read this book very quickly, within a
Mm.
week, because I
Wow.
couldn't stop reading. And I was surprised. There's very little in this book about you and China. Because to me, you and China is a major part of you, because that's
Yeah,
how I know you.
yeah.
I knew you in China, and I always thought China is a huge part of your life. But you didn't show much in this book.
No, there's a little bit section, but it's quite a small section.
Yeah.
It was bigger, I must confess, and it was
Mm.
edited down. Um, but actually, at the end of it, I thought if I wrote so much about China, then
It's another book.
and I would also like to write about, you know, Jamaica and some other places at
Yeah.
this time. And and to be fair, I also wrote another book called Kung Fu Trip.
Mm.
Are you familiar with that one?
It's a very popular one of
Yes, yes,
your most popular book.
yes. And
Yeah.
so I already wrote that book, and so that's the only reason why. But China does mean a lot to me. I mean, I think it was just the year 2000. I was working in Hong Kong, and after I did my work, um, you used to be able to go to the border, give your passport in, and just at Shenzhen, and
Yeah.
then go into
Mainland.
into mainland,
Yeah.
Guangzhou.
Yeah.
But it was with lots of tourists. I didn't really enjoy it that much because it was with tourists. I didn't have freedom. But actually, when I got there, I went, yeah, I'm in China, you know, because from a kid, I loved Chinese food and I always had Chinese friends and things like this. And we grew up being told not to like China, you know, because it's communist, you
Yeah.
know, the red
In the
devil.
70s and 80s,
Yes, yeah,
back into the years.
yes. So I wanted to go and see for myself. I always like to do that anyway. When my government was telling me, you know, the Russians are dangerous and you shouldn't mix with them, I went to Russia. They say Cuban people are bad people, communist people. I go to Cuba. You know, just
Yeah.
I just go there. I want to see for myself.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to China. I didn't enjoy it that much because I was because I was with all these tourists and I was doing the tourist thing, you know. But I said I'm coming back. And then the next year I came back, and every year since then I've been. Um, I think I didn't go 1 year, so to make up for it, I went twice the next year.
First, let's talk about how China come into your picture from the earliest memory of
Well,
yours.
I, like a lot of people of my generation,
Mm.
was obsessed with Bruce Lee films.
Yeah.
And also, I always talk about Jackie Chan, but Jackie Chan before he went to Hollywood. But anyway, I used to watch all those early kung fu films. And then Bruce Lee come along and had a really big budget film with Enter the Dragon.
Mm.
And I started to practice kung fu. When I first went to China, I went to the Shaolin Temple to train. A Chinese friend said, look, I can get you to train in the Shaolin Temple with the Shaolin monks. I mean, you can't do that now. Now it's a tourist attraction, right?
Mm.
Now there are no real monks practicing there. It's just for tourism.
Mm.
Oh, but this time it was, and I went and I trained with these monks. So I was studying at Shaolin for some time, and then I went to Chenjiago,
Mm.
which is the home of Tai Chi.
Mm.
And I've been studying in Chenjiago for, I can't remember, about 10 years now.
So, like you said, you're going back to China almost every year. And what has been your experience, your trips in China?
This is the answer to your question. If I didn't love China so much, look how big the world is. There's lots of other places to go, but I always go back to China. And as you know, I will go to Beijing, I'll go to Shanghai, but I always go back to my little village, Chenjiago.
Mm.
And when I do my Kung Fu training, my Tai Chi training, I have a friend there, and she always lends me her bicycle. And then I ride into the other little villages. These villages have never seen a black man, you know. When they see me, they just come out and we talk. They talk about old China. They ask me about my hair. I play football with the children. Sometimes I teach them a little bit of English. Sometimes they teach me a little bit of Chinese. So I that's how much I love it, you know.
Mm.
And every time I go there, I have fun. I have really good experiences. But the interesting thing is as well, every time I go there, it's different. I think China is one of those places. I think it's a bit like India. India is a country, but big. And Africa, in that I'm using Africa as a whole continent now.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't say you've done Africa, or you can't say you've done India, you can't say you've done China, because it's so big. You know, I mean, I meet people in China, and I've traveled around more of China than they have, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
Because it's so big. I know people in the north of China, and they think they've traveled well around the north of China, but they've never been to Guilin or something like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it will take you a lifetime to do China, just like
Yeah.
it would India or Africa.
So the biggest country in Africa is Algeria, and China is 4 times of the size of Algeria. Just think
Right.
of the landscape, how big China is.
Yes.
So it's very
Yes.
big, and people are very, very
Yeah.
different from one
It's a
place to the
massive
other.
country. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think what some people don't appreciate is the people that are there, how many people, and how they can differ from one place to another.
exactly.
You know, it's so easy to stereotype Chinese as one thing or another. And I mean, when I was young, it was poor Chinese refugees.
Yeah,
You know, there was two
exactly.
things: there was the communists, and then there was the refugees.
Yeah,
And now people see Crazy Rich Asians, you know, the film,
yeah,
and people
exactly.
just think, oh, yeah. Or they see Africans in different, in Chinese people in different countries around the world, in Africa or in Europe, doing building projects and things like that. And they think, oh, they're coming to take over the world again.
Yeah. So I find actually lots of young people, they don't know China has been very recently been very, very poor, as poor as certain countries in Africa.
The thing is now that we have this term, developing country.
Mm.
But when I was growing up, there was the first world, which was basically Europe, America, Australia, New Zealand. The third world, which is the poor countries in India and parts of Africa and the Caribbean. And then you had the second world, which is kind of China and Russia and a lot of those countries that were more left wing. And the only thing that saved those countries from not being third world countries is the fact that they had governments that would look after the poor. Even though they were poor, they still wasn't as bad as Africans. You know, they that was the communist system. It tried to feed everybody. Sometimes it wasn't so successful in some, but everybody got fed, and the state took care of everybody. But you know, in some countries, if you didn't have a job, the state had no responsibility for you. You know. And in China and Russia, at least, even the poorest of the poor, the state took some responsibility for you. Otherwise, you would have been third world country too.
Yeah. I think we have been actually, like, we were called a developing country, but actually back then I remember Chinese themselves didn't even believe that we were in the developing country. Everybody knows we're just underdeveloped country. We're among the
Yes,
poorest countries.
yes.
So can you tell me, you told me before, and I really love the stories that, like, the most memorable stories of your encounter with the local Chinese, because I know that when you travel, you always travel alone with
Yes.
your luggages. You don't even have a guide, you don't even have assistant. For people at your level, you just go to the villages alone, exploring without speaking fluent Chinese, just depending on the Chinese phrases you learned by yourself. That's really amazing story. Like, for lots of people, is they can't even imagine someone doing that.
China, in terms of my personal safety, one of the safest places in the world. I've never had issues with stealing or anything like that. I've heard some things. Actually, I had the complete opposite. Can I tell you this story about what happened to me
Go
in
ahead.
Beijing?
Yeah.
I used to have a friend who booked me a hotel. This is one of the first times I went to Beijing. So I came back to the hotel. So there's quite a distance, you know. And then I saw the meter on the taxi driver, and I gave him my money. And he's saying, no, you need to pay more. So I think he's trying to rob me. So I said, no. I look and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah. I gave him. He said, no. And he's getting a little bit angry. So don't mess with me, man. And then we are there. We stand off for about 20 minutes. Stand off, really. And it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And he won't give in, and I won't give in, because I'm not going to be ripped off.
Yeah.
And he's thinking, whatever he's thinking, he's not going to let me go. So in the end, I realized something. It's my fault. It's
Oh,
my problem. Instead of saying 1 yuan, the 1 kwai,
yeah.
I was picking up the 1 jiao, 1 jiao note.
Oh, so that's like 10% of what you should have
Yes, yes,
paid.
yes. So when I realized, I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Then I paid him. Then I went to the hotel. I went to my room. I went to bed. And about 4 o'clock, the hotel people ring me. I said, what do you want? And they said, please, can you come down here? I said, what for? They said, you have to come down. It's important. We have a big problem. So I thought, what's the problem? So I went down there and I saw the taxi driver. And I was like, what does he want? You know? Me and this guy, I mean, I paid him.
Yeah.
And then the guy just went like this. He had my wallet.
Oh, you lost your wallet.
Yes, he had my wallet.
Oh my God, you left your wallet in his car while you're fighting with him.
Yes,
Oh
yes,
my God.
yes. And he went all the way back over to East.
Oh my
And
God.
then when he found my wallet, he came back to give it to me.
Yeah. Wow.
And I said to him, what? I'm so sorry for the receptionist translator. I said, I'm so sorry. And, I want to give him some money to pay him. He said, just give me the taxi fare. Just give me the taxi fare. And I gave
Yeah.
him the taxi fare and a little tip,
Mm,
But, he could have
mm,
just gone,
mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so, and that was one of the first times I went to China. And I
Yeah.
just went, right, okay, you guys are cool. Now, I know there are some thieves, like everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, I know there are some people who have prejudice, who are racist or whatever.
Mm,
But in my experience, you know, I never had that experience. It's funny because when I just told a couple of friends
mm,
today, Chinese friends,
mm,
after I talked to you, that I was going to talk to
mm.
you,
Yeah.
and I said, I can't think of any kind of racist experience I had in China.
Yeah.
I'm saying to them, I can't make one up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never had one.
Yeah.
If I had an issue, um, there was one time when I was in a
Mm,
bar
mm,
and they tried to do a little, like a robbery, like a cheating thing,
mm, mm,
and I
mm,
got really angry and upset and everything. But it had nothing to do with race.
mm,
It's
mm,
just one of these bars where they just rip off foreigners.
mm, mm,
You
mm.
know, I couldn't
Every,
even, I couldn't blame that on race because I know
yeah.
it happens to white guys.
Yeah. I remember once you told me the story of you met a man, a stranger, at a train station, and then
Oh
you
yeah,
became really good friends. Do you
yes, yeah.
remember what happened? Yeah.
He I was in the train station looking. I was in Shanghai and I wanted to go to Nanjing.
Mm,
When you're a stranger, you're looking, and he came to me and he said, "Are you okay?" So I said, "Yeah." Sometimes a lot of Chinese people, especially those that haven't been outside China and they've learned English, they just come. They want to practice their English.
mm,
You know,
mm,
so I could see, he wants to practice his English. And I said, "I want to go to Nanjing." He said, "Oh, you go here, you go there," and then we had some time. So he said, what do you do in China?" So I said, "Well, nothing. I just come here because I I have my kung fu teacher here, and I just love the people and the
mm.
culture." So we started talking. He said, "Well, tell me, what do you really do? Do you have a little job? You earn some money?" So I said,
Mm.
"No." He said, "You have a girlfriend?" I said, and then after maybe the third or fourth time he asked me, I said, "No, I just come here for the love of the people." And actually, he hugged me. Chinese guys don't hug very much.
Yeah, they don't hug.
He hugged me. He said, "Wow,
Oh.
man, you're the first foreigner I ever met like that. Just comes to China just for the love, not to make money, not to find a girlfriend, just to come."
Mm,
And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't take money from China. I give money to China."
yeah.
Um, and so we became friends. And he had at the time 2 girls with him. twins,
Mm.
twins, and they were just born then. And actually, because they are locked down now in China, every day when I get up, I give those girls lessons. They are 12 years old now. Show you how long ago that was.
Oh, so
They're
that's
12 years old.
his daughter, twins,
Yes,
and
yes.
they are not talking to you.
Yes, yeah. Every day I teach them English.
Oh, wow.
Yes, yeah.
That's
Since the
amazing.
lockdown, I used to teach them anyway, randomly.
Yeah,
But because of the lockdown, most days
yeah.
I sit down with them and I give them a teaching program, and sometimes they teach me English in return. And they've come to my
They
house.
teach you Chinese.
Sorry, teach me Chinese. Yeah. Sometimes they could speak English too. um, they came here and stayed last year.
Mm.
They loved it. I took them around the country and took
Wow.
them. Yeah. So that's how we met. And I tell you something else as well. A lot
Yeah.
of guys say, and I hear this from all kinds of guys in China, foreign guys I'm talking about, European guys and African guys and Caribbean guys. They say they find it very hard to make male friends in China. They can make female friends, but not male friends. And I can understand why, because one of the things, especially the city culture, is that we must have a purpose for being friends, You know what I mean? You're my colleague, you're my relative, what? In England, I can be your friend just because we like the same football team. I can be your friend just because, you're cool, I like to hang out with you.
Yeah.
China, it's like you have to have some link.
Yeah.
And a friend told me why. He said that when he had a foreign friend, his mother said, "Why? What's the purpose? What's the reason?
Yeah.
You want to be friends with this guy, You can't just have friends just for the sake of being friends." But
Yeah.
I have achieved that, With this guy, we've been friends now for 12 years. I have other friends that I know mainly through kongfu, but I have a friend who I'm a little bit worried about because he's from Wuhan. I haven't heard from him recently.
Oh, no.
He's a DJ in a nightclub,
Okay.
That's why.
Wow.
But that's how I met him. I was in Shanghai, and he came up and went, "Man, I like your hair," and we started to talk about music. In 10 minutes, we was in my hotel room playing music to each other. I showed him some of my videos. He went, "Man, we got to hang out together." And then I met his girlfriend. And we became friends, and he was a young guy at the time. He was like 22, and we are still friends. Like I said, I haven't heard from him recently, so I'm a little bit worried. So it can be hard for men to make male friends in China.
Yeah.
But when you do, you got good friends.
Yeah. That's true. Especially lots of the Chinese men believe making money is the priority of life. They don't develop their personal interest. So they don't have like a football club. They don't have like music club where you can meet friends for pure interest of pleasure. So that's one thing. Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like China is a happy place and everybody's fine. There's some issues I have, I mean, I had a very good friend once, and one day I was talking to her. I was in England and she was in China, and I told her, that I'm coming soon to China, and when I come, I want to see you. And I said to her, at the time, just before I said that, I said, "How's your boyfriend?" Well, I said his name, I said, "How is Lang?" And she said, "He's fine." And so then I said, "Look, I'm coming to China next month, and when I come, I hope to see you, both of you." And then she said, "We are not together anymore." So I said, "You just told me he's okay." And he said, "Well, he's okay, but we're not together. So you can see us, but you have to see us separately." So these couple, I really love them together, So I said, "Why? What's the problem? You were so close." And she said, "Well, he got a job doing graphics." I said, "That's cool. He likes graphics." He said he really loves his job. So I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "He's not earning any money now." She said, "I'm earning more money than him. It's a shame. It's embarrassing." So he said, that's why you left him? That's why you parted? And he said, yeah. And I thought, wow. You know, and the Tina Turner song came into my head. You know, what's love got to do with it?
Yeah.
I said to her, what about love? And she said, what's love got to do with it?
Yeah.
You know, this is what I don't like, this matching of people by their wages and by their income, by their status, you know.
Yeah. What's your outlook of your travel trip to China now?
Well, for this year, I don't think it's possible because of, you know, COVID-19, coronavirus. I'm just going to get some writing done, as much writing as I can to get it all done. And then maybe next year, you know, if I don't go next year, it will be 3 years no China. Because this year, 2 years no China.
Wow.
And so I really feel like
You have to go 3 times in that year once you go.
Yes, I will have to, you know, to make up for it.
So exactly, I think right now at this time, at this stage, we need the most is love and unity and solidarity.
Yes.
The world is a mess.
Yes.
There's challenges everywhere.
And we can't just rely on our politicians, no matter where you are, you know, Jamaica, China, South Africa, India, whatever. You can't rely on your politicians to administer this love. We've got to do it amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
We've got to come together, regardless of what they are doing.
Exactly. And exactly this time, it provoked lots of hate because people are angry.
Yes, yeah.
But we have to think creatively, think of love.
Yes. You took the words out of my mouth.
Because we think the same. That's why we are friends.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, Benjamin. It's such a pleasure to talk to you, to talk about your story, your book, and also I'm looking forward to see this film on BBC or in the cinema.
Yes.
I can't wait.
Okay.
Okay.
Increase the peace.
Peace. Yes. Increase the peace. All right. Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.